Hey guys, welcome back to the 1v1 podcast. I'm your host, Vlhadus, and today I have a very special guest of mine. It's actually one of our Burning Discussion buddies, or one of my buddies personally, Kreed. How's it going, man? It's great to have you on.
It's going well. Glad to be on your show.
Finally, right? It's like,
Finally. Yeah.
It's like, oh my god. And it's so weird because like I actually want to get art.
Timing.
No, right. It's like I want to get ARC. I want to get, pretty much like everybody from the Burning Discussion on my thing. I guess originally I was just trying to get a lot more people in, like doing the webcam and having that interaction so people can watch. But it was kind of funny. The more comments I got, people were like, actually, I don't watch it. Like I actually watch it more in my car, or I listen to it more. And I'm just like, even because I'm the type of person that I love watching podcasts. I love seeing facial reactions. I love seeing body language. Like that's just me personally. But I know I'm probably in the severe minority when it comes to that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree. I like watching stuff too. And it's funny because my wife likes watching podcast and some of the stuff. So the Wheel of Time group, the Dusty Wheel show.
Right.
They were going on for hours, 4 or 5 hours later, they're still talking about, having guests on the show and stuff. And she's just fully engaged.
It's always interesting like that. I mean, it keeps it interesting for me, but I understand, different strokes for different folks. But, as soon as I started interviewing people that, hey, I don't have a webcam, is that okay? And then I just started just being like, yeah, sure, man. I just want to have a conversation. At the end of the day, it's all about the level of the conversation. And I think there's just so many people, especially regarding Ashes of Creation, that I just don't care anymore. It's like, if you have a webcam, great. If you don't, it don't matter, man. Just come and have a conversation.
Oh, now we find out why you were going to interview me now.
Hey, well, it's kind of funny because like the audience people don't know this, but you can't show your face for other reasons. So I don't know if you want to talk about that or don't want to talk about that. It's up to you.
Well, briefly we can touch on it. Primarily, it's kind of the work I do. I'm not allowed because I'm very outspoken.
Right.
And it's a big no-no in my work when you're going to be that outspoken, and they can put a face to it. So, okay,
right.
I'll eliminate my face and I'll just keep being outspoken then.
That's right. That's why I got the creepy, guy in black next to me. Yeah. But so let's kind of, go into this a little bit, because I know
Sure.
Or what I like to do with my 1v1s, right, is I like getting to know the person, right? So you've been on Burning Discussion for how long now? Just curious.
It's been going over several months now, actually. So I joined the show somewhere in his 30th something episodes, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
And then I started moving forward with that because he is needing to have replacements fill in, and he's always wanted me on the show. Sort of thing.
Because you and X, you and X go back like many years. Just,
yes.
I mean, because y'all been friends for like 20 something years. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've been since basically 2003, 2004-ish is when we met, playing City of Heroes, and so it's it's pushing 20 years now. So it's
that's awesome.
It's 19 going on to 20. But we met him playing City of Heroes and gaming stuff, and that was way back 2003 to 2004-ish, and we had a lot of fun during those. And then of course World of Warcraft was coming out around that period of time too, in the late fall sort of thing.
Right.
And so a lot of us were involved in the beta testing. I did some of the beta, not all of it.
Right.
And I didn't jump onto the guild that he had this big grand idea of creating a guild for World of Warcraft. He foresaw that it was going to be a big gaming thing and boom at the time. And so a lot of our guild that we had jumped over to the beta and got into World of Warcraft. So we started really strong with a couple hundred players right off the bat. Right. By the time the game actually launched, in the first month we were climbing. The numbers were climbing. I think I joined within the month after the game started. And it was exciting times back then. And it did not take long before he turned around and said, "Hey, I want to make you number 2 in command."
Right.
And I'm like, "Oh boy." Here's your duties. Work on the website. working the stuff, you're
Right.
doing the applications to the guild, and it was a nonstop job.
No, for sure. So just so people know, when I say X, I'm referring to Extermicide. So Extermicide is the host and creator of the Burning Discussion podcast. And of course, if you want to, I did a 1v1 with X. He was episode 5. God, it's been a minute, but you'll see him. He has, it's Extermicide.
He's in the list.
Yeah,
he's
somewhere out there, dude. He's somewhere out there. But no, he's a good dude. You know what I mean? And I know, especially doing the kind of podcasts that he does, right? And one of the reasons why I actually went to go on the Burning Discussion was because when I saw you, Ludo, I think it was Dragonfly at the time, and X, and just the way y'all talked about ashes and the theory crafting, but I felt there was just something there, and I was like, man, I really like this, and not talking about any other, ashes podcast or whatever, but to me, I felt like the conversation was really good. So I was really happy whenever X made me an honorary member of the show, and now it's like, it's cool, you know what I mean? I love the dynamic that we all have between myself, you, Ludo, Ark, X, and even me, Matt. Now me, Matt's a good dude too, man. Like, we've been talking on the side, and we did our 1v1, which by the time you hear this 1v1, you've already seen his 1v1,
Gotcha.
because right. And that's the other thing too, is that all these 1v1s that I've been doing, I mean, it's been a huge blessing of mine, that people have been wanting to come on, have been messaging me on Discord, and wanting to have this conversation about ashes. And I think especially during this May live stream, I mean, man, it's gonna get ridiculous, bro. I mean, and I don't want to start talking about ashes just yet, because I think we're not really done talking about you, but just to say, you're a pretty young cat, right? You're in your 20s, right, Kreed?
Yeah.
You're young.
Well, I am reverting to my 20s. Anybody who knows me, I'm currently regrowing my hair since COVID started, as I will go see the barber to do it. But one of the things right off the bat, what I had stated was, with my work and stuff like that, and everybody who knows me, I said, well, I'm not going to cut my hair until COVID is officially over. The pandemic's officially over. I will cut my hair and donate my hair to cancer victims, primarily something for kids. So by the time we get there, I'm going to have some pretty long hair. So I'm almost back to where I used to be in my early 20s, which is way past the shoulders.
Wow.
So, yeah, I can give Fabio a run for his money, even in his prime.
Wow. So, I mean, but basically, like, I'm 35. I've been playing MMOs since 2006. That was when I started my forte into World of Warcraft. But you've been playing MMOs for a lot longer than 2006.
Well, MMOs really didn't come around until like the early 2000s, late 90s.
Like late 90s.
Like late 90s.
98.
But there was other games that were considered MMOs, just not
Right.
on the scale we see today. So I
Right.
was into a lot of those. So I am over 50 in regards to age. But it's and I've seen a lot of games over the years. I started playing video games back in the 70s, going to the arcade. First games were like some of the very first ones, Asteroids, and it wasn't too long after that, Defender came out and stuff like that.
Right.
So, and then the
Frogger
80s was a real boom. Oh, Frogger was another big one.
Yeah,
and of course Pac-Man and stuff like that.
Tetris, all that.
Yeah, Tetris. Well, Tetris came out a little bit later, but one of the things that it just got me drawn in, and then it wasn't too long before the home console started coming into play, and then
like the Atari and stuff, right? Atari, Nintendo.
Yeah, there's Atari. Coleco was the very first.
Oh, Coleco, right?
Yeah.
Pong.
No. And then it was literally. And then one of the big ones that came out not too long after was Donkey Kong and stuff like that. So all those big steps in evolution, I got to see those firsthand.
That's awesome.
That was lots of fun in the arcade, and then home consoles, the Atari, Nintendo. When that came out, that was an awesome setup. The very first Nintendos with Mario Brothers, and how many hours and playing Zelda and stuff like that. But what got me into computing was a Commodore VIC-20, which preceded by
you
2
had a
years
Commodore?
Yep, it
Oh
precedes
my
the Commodore
God.
64, which was more popular because that's meant to it had 64 bits
Right.
of memory. That's it.
Right. It's like, holy crap. It's
But I
taking
had
it
a
old
Commodore
school.
VIC-20, which preceded it by 2 years, and I
Right.
learned how to actually program on it a little bit and play games on it as well. So one of my main games, I used to have, one of the first games I got was Frogger
Mhm.
originally, but I had to write the game. So they give you the list, you have to copy it all out, and you have to save it on tape, and you had to play the game,
Oh my
write it
God.
all out. So that was my first taste of coding, and I just despised it because it's like, oh, make me
Jesus.
type something. But so it was interesting back in those days. But they came up with one of the first or along the lines that Atari had was a cartridge that you could put into the plane. And one of what really developed for me was a game called Gorf, which was very similar to Space Invaders,
Oh,
except for
okay.
you could go up and down and sideways and on angles and stuff like that.
Okay.
And you had different maps, and I got exceptionally good with that. And I got very creative because I had one of the first joysticks ever made for a computer or a computer-like system, and I had that thing all tied down to a board that I could sit on my lap, so I could actually the joystick sit in front of me and not on a tabletop and stuff like that. Because you got to
Wow.
remember, we didn't have monitors back then. You plugged the VIC-20 into your TV. So
Is that how that worked? Holy God.
that's how that works. So you'd have to hook it up to your TV all the time.
That's crazy.
And then so that was when I started getting into the gaming part of it. And then it wasn't too long into the early 90s when Windows 3.1 and DOS games were starting to become a thing. And it wasn't too long until about I went from 3.1 into Windows 95, and Windows 95 expanded and opened up gaming at that
for sure.
point.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the games like Wing Commander series, the first Wing Commander, the second and third one, the second one was much better, and then the third one was way better, sort of thing. And there's all the live action, and it was a lot of fun in those days. And then of course, anything to play online with other players involved you somehow taking. You either did one or two things. You did it over the dial-up, and you do a network people's computers together, which was a huge pain because somebody was always disconnecting and just getting it all okayed. Or you took your entire computer system over to your buddies, that was a computer whiz, and everybody showed up his house, and he would do a landline.
Right.
and game that way, so we could do multiplayer like StarCraft and stuff like that. The early
Right.
StarCraft or the Command and Conquers back in those days. So we could all play against each other because you couldn't really play it over the internet very effectively. And the other one was the other favorite of ours back in those days too was the NHL hockey. So one of the first things I got was the old MS Sidewinder, Microsoft Sidewinder game pads that could daisy chain in to each other. And then you just had to plug it into one computer, so all 8 of us could sit there and play hockey on the same screen. And then we just had a projector that would project it on a wall, so we'd have like a 12-foot screen, and we'd play that all weekend, drinking and partying with the buddies and stuff like that, and having tournaments. So yeah, those days are fun. But prior to that, during those times too, I was still playing around with the Sega Genesis as well back in those days. So that was a lot of fun.
So I know, because there was so many different, I would not say iterations of the MMO, right? But MMOs, especially in the late 90s, early 2000s, right? That was the beginning inception of the massive multiplayer online roleplay game.
Absolutely.
And so there were games like EverQuest, which I never played, Dark Age of Camelot. There was Ultima Online. What was your first forte into MMO gaming? I'm just curious.
It was kind of a couple of things. Ultima Online was one.
Okay.
I didn't stick into it as much, and there was also another one. There was a Neverwinter Nights version that was semi-online in some ways.
Right. Is that the one that Steven always talked about? The one where he's like, I had to pay or my mom paid $6 a minute or something like
probably.
that? Okay. Because it was Neverwinter Nights. That's what he played on AOL back in like 1990 something.
Yeah, that one was it. it was an MMO of sorts in some ways. In some ways, it wasn't. But
Hmm.
I remember playing that one, and then my real first good taste of a true MMO that we kind of like City Heroes or World of Warcraft or anything along those lines
Right.
would have been Anarchy Online that I briefly played. I didn't get into it as much, but Anarchy Online was another early one that was made in the year 2000, sort of thing, 2000
Wow.
2001. So and it lasted, and it has an interesting history that tied into a later date MMO that came out in around 2007, which is Age of Conan.
Right.
So Funcom took the Anarchy Online engine and rebuilt it and kind of tweaked and rebuilt it and made Age of Conan
Right.
back in the day. But it was fun, and they thought that they didn't program it out, but they didn't activate the programming in it. So there's a bunch of backdoor stuff that you could do from Anarchy Online in Age of Conan, and game accounts got hacked because of it. So Funcom got themselves into trouble and all that sort of thing with that sort of stuff. And
Right.
and it was just somebody picked up on the program. Hey, I remember this program. Look what I can activate. And,
Well, because I know back then, right? The thing that I think was very exciting was because it was so new to people. The
it was
feeling of playing with others and feeling like this objective kind of game. Because a lot of the games, of course, that we played it with Nintendo, Super Nintendo, you can play potentially with 1 or 2 players, and then it wasn't until like N64 that you can play with 4 players. But
yeah.
online, now you can play with thousands of players, and it was just this never before seen kind of experience where you just see all of these players like literally all around you that you can
Yeah.
party up with and do activities with. And I don't know, I mean, do you think that we kind of lost sight of what it is to play an MMO in current day, like right now in 2022?
I don't think the same creativity is there as much anymore,
Okay.
is the best way to put it. Because back in those days, there was groundbreaking creativity, and
For sure.
like there's there's the Lineage games, and of course, they had to really think on how they did stuff, and like EverQuest and things like that, and it turned
Right.
out quite well for the time that it came out in.
Right.
Where you start to see really groundbreaking stuff change was when City Heroes started coming out. Now you can have a superhero that can fly in any direction and or have superpowers, and so
Right.
that was fascinating. And then shortly after that, World of Warcraft came out and
Hmm.
really raised the bar up for that time period even
Right.
further. And they quickly learned that hey, the community is out there,
Right.
and if you get the community involved and open it up so you can do mods for the game, because there's all sorts of mods you can do for the interface, because the base game was terrible. The mods, and you just had like one bar, you had like 6 bars, but you had to scroll through them,
Right.
and then flip it through. There was no stacking of bars, and it didn't take long before the mods came out and did that, so you could have 2 sidebars left and right, and 2 stack bars, and that's just like, oh my god, I can hit all these buttons now, and everything's on the screen, and
Right.
simple stuff like that. That's where it started to take off, and then not too long after, the other games started showing up on the map. Lord of the Rings is another long-term example. They were kind of modeled after World of Warcraft
Right.
framing, and then of course completely different story, but basically the interface is much the same and stuff like that. And then other games like Age of Conan and then Star Trek Online and Terra and all those games are coming out. So it's
Right.
over the years it's developed, but the
Do,
ingenuity is not the same level anymore. So you see a lot of games that are coming out, and the storyline is either sometimes lacking,
right.
or sometimes the interface is clunky. So like they're not using pre-existing ideas, or bringing them to the table, or trying to do it so different they forget about the little stuff. So you don't see as thorough programming as much as they used to.
Do you think it's because of World of Warcraft's success? They just figured, well, hell, let's just clone our MMO to fit that mold and we'll become successful too. Because I think what you said is actually, pretty spot on. I mean, there could be different variations of the truth, right,
Oh
when
yeah.
it comes to that, but I think ultimately developers want to make as much money with spending as less money as possible, right? And especially with MMO
Yeah.
projects already being like multi-million dollar games that you'd potentially make.
EA is a really good example of trying to get into the market because they saw the money that World of Warcraft was making.
Right.
And when you actually add it up, $15 a month for subscription fees, you have millions.
It's a lot of money. And it was
Money
said
comes in.
12 million
Uh,
people were playing World of Warcraft in Wrath of the Lich King. That's
yeah,
a lot of people.
yeah. Because if you look at just for Valheim, the Viking game,
Right.
they sold 4 million copies within a couple of months,
Hmm.
and they were only charging $19
Hmm.
to get into early access, and that made them between 60 and $80 million.
Right.
And it just launched them into the next thing. And then a
Right.
few months later, they're well over 5 million people buying into the game. So they really, all of a sudden, they have a pool of money.
Right.
World of Warcraft back in the day was doing that with
Every
12
month.
million
Yeah, I
bucks
know.
every
Yeah,
month.
it's just
Uh,
ridiculous how much money they were making.
the numbers are great. They're fantastic. When
Hmm.
you get, and eventually, as the accounts stayed active and coming in and stuff like that,
Right.
World of Warcraft was bringing in money. So I think a lot of the gaming industry really saw that and started paying attention. Especially EA is a good example when they tried to bring Star Wars online.
Oh yeah, with you're
The,
talking about the Old Republic, right?
the Old Republic. So they looked at BioWare and said, "Hey, we can jump into the MMO market. These guys have already got something started. We just buy them out and take it over."
Right.
And they did, and well, it was successful for a period of time, and then it dropped right off the map
Of course.
because now big corporations running the show, and big
Hmm.
corporations like deadlines and spreadsheets and nothing but numbers going up.
Right.
Well, you have to have a product that is going to sell and keep your subscriber base jumping on,
Right.
and
And
they took shortcuts.
yeah, for sure. And I think that's where Steven has such a great leverage over a lot of the other bureaucracy that happens in like Activision or Bethesda or
Mhm.
Red Rooster or just insert corporation there, you know what I mean? Like cuz Steven not only has the funds to make a really good MMO, but he also has the creativity that you're exactly talking about, and he's
Oh
hiring
yeah,
people who are or that want to be as creative as he is and has a passion for MMOs the same as he does. Because I think that's what's been happening, and it's this decline of MMOs from let's say 2010 to now is that the people developing these games aren't passionate about it. They're just hiring developers that are good at that side of it, but they don't play MMOs, so they don't really know, is this really a good game loop? Is this what it seems fine? Like I think it works, like you know what I mean? But they don't know because they're
yeah,
not players. And Steven's
yeah.
literally hiring people that are players. They're
And
developers, but they're
he's a
players.
yeah, he's a player himself, so he's going, I want this in the game, I want that in the
Right.
game, I would like to do this. I don't know how to make it done. I know it can be done. I want
Right.
you guys to do it.
Right.
And he wants somebody, and this is, it's hard to do nowadays, but to get a perfect fit with your staff,
Very true.
get add add like he's got what, over 150 staff now. So
Yep.
that means that he's very well set in the mountain. Plus he's using UE5. So he almost doesn't need as many, but by having that many, he can pump it out faster now. I just
Right.
finished watching a video that referred to that, going independent gaming guys that want to make a small game and something like that are going to be able to
Right.
do a lot of stuff with a smaller amount.
Right.
And so I can only imagine what he's going to do with his large enough crew.
And he wants
But
to keep it growing too. That's
and
the
he
thing.
wants to keep it growing within reason, but he's also scrutinizing who it is, how
Oh,
they
for
fit
sure.
on the team,
Hmm.
personality, their skills,
Right.
and welcome aboard when you meet all the criteria that he's looking for. And
Right.
he will know when he sits down with the people as he gets to know them, and more than just the interview, but personalized meeting with them. He'll be able to tell whether or not they're a good fit and stuff like that. So he's been, and he's in a good time right now to attract that type of base.
Oh yeah.
because he can create an environment. His number one concern is to make sure that he has an environment set for his staff to work in that works.
Right.
And everybody gets along and everybody meshes.
Right.
Because look at the studios that are having problems right now. Ubisoft, Ubisoft, and Blizzard.
Mm-hmm.
They never controlled that stuff nor never filtered it out properly. And they hired, exactly as you were saying, well, you're hired to do the job, then you're hired to do the job because of your skill set, not because of your personality and skill set.
Right.
Got him into trouble.
It did. Because again, it's the culture that you're trying to cultivate. I mean, and this is the same that can be said for any job. It doesn't have to be just necessarily for MMO,
exactly.
Game making. But again, when you're a large corporation, you can churn and burn and it's fine. To the corporate people, it's fine. But when it comes to the actual teams and how it affects the team dynamic, especially gaming is such a it's a team dynamic. You're not going to have one person make a world, hey, make 19 zones for us. Thanks. Like you're not going to do that. You're going to be collaborative of like maybe 15 other people, including yourself, all making zones.
If you don't have the passion and inner fire,
right,
when you're doing that type of stuff, then your quality of work is going to show different
for sure.
And if you have that passion and boy, that can go a long ways, and it shows in some games. There's some very passionate developed games out there that are just like, wow, they spent a lot of time making this, and they really were proud to show it. Like the BioWare staff were proud what they did with Star Wars,
right?
And as a fan going into the game, you could see their passion firsthand, and how the storyline went, the smoothness of everything. But they never got time to develop the game content, because by then EA had taken over and said, we want this, and that, and we'll scrap the rest of that. And it suffered as a result of that. So making games nowadays is just, it'll be nice to see. I think Steven's on a good thing, and the timing's going to be right for him in the game.
So
it's going to be amazing.
I can't not talk about it anymore. So let's please talk about the freaking yes, dude. Yes, like okay. I haven't properly nerded out with someone because today I've been busy. I worked till 5. I was able to chat with a little bit of a buddy of mine in Axiom, but I haven't really let it all out yet. So I'll prepare yourself, Kreed.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
I'm giving it all right now because, dude.
Let's compare notes and see if you caught some of the small things in the background.
Bro, okay. So for me, coming from World of Warcraft, because people know that I played WoW predominantly for almost 15 years, seasons wasn't really a thing. Like our major towns, like you go to Stormwind is the same climate, same type of day. It does not change.
Go to Ironforge, just snow on the ground on the outside.
Right. It's just static. It's static. And honestly, I got kind of emotional. Like, so the 3-minute teaser that they showed, I don't know if it was the music. I don't know what it was, but I'm not even part of Intrepid. Like I'm just an Ashes of Creation content creator. And I was literally getting teary because it looked so beautiful. And I can just see the passion that was put into this, not only this zone, but in all the little micro things. The sounds, dude. Oh my God. The freaking birds, the wind.
Sweet woodpecker in the distance.
Dude,
the rustling of
leaves. My God.
The ambient sound draws you in and makes you feel what you're seeing.
And that's the thing that people always said about New World, was that the sound design in New World is so good. And I agree. I never played New World, but every time I heard or saw videos of New World, and I heard like trees chopping, birds chirping, the grass rustling through, it sounded really good. And hearing the water in the distance and like the, just all of that. And when Steven was running over the little like stream, and you heard the stream, and it sounded like an actual like water stream, like the sound design,
splashing of the heat hitting the water. Yep.
Oh my God, it's like all those little things, but the dynamic seasonal change. Holy crap, guys! This was insane. Like, I'm sorry, but any MMO right now, if I was a developer somewhere else, like, I'd be like, I want to quit and go work for them. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It just seems like they're doing something exciting and I want to be a part of it. If I was a person that was like an engineer or like a graphic designer or whatever, man, I don't know, man. That's just something to be really, really excited about. And I think with Ashes specifically is that, man, dude, Steven just, he had such foresight to know exactly what he wanted in his MMO.
His vision will be able to be put into reality better than he could even envision.
Very
just
true,
based on old
probably.
MMOs and how you program. And one of the simple things I can point out, as you're saying, the water splashing, the footsteps running along the ground, the crunch of the dirt compared to the crunch of grass or dry grass.
Right.
One of the things that UE5 does that the other ones don't, and most other games don't do, is that the AI in the background calculates and puts that in place already.
Mm-hmm.
So the water dripping in a cavern off onto rocks onto the floor from the ceiling,
Right.
or the character running along the ground.
Right.
They don't have to go in there and program all that per se.
Right.
They can add that in UE5. The AI takes care of that. It matches up the sound that you should be sounding, and it gives the developer a choice. Which ones do you want to use?
That's just so
a heavier foot, a medium foot, a light foot, which makes all different sounds. So the programming of that's going to be quite easy. It's just a matter of tying it all together and whatnot. But the AI takes care of a lot of that part, and it already has the sound on the database.
Right.
They're not going out and recording the sounds and manually doing it from scratch.
Right. And so I'm just curious, Kreed, because, with all due respect, you've seen a lot more games than I have in your course of life compared to mine. Like, how does it feel to like literally see what I saw, what we both saw? Like, how did you react? Like, I'm just curious.
For me, it was looking at it going, it's about time somebody got to where we should be.
Very true. Very true. Okay.
It is. It's like somebody's paying attention to details. This is very lacking. And Steven really wants the details taken care of, and he's really pushing for it. And he has a program from Epic that will make that happen even more so. And it's when you see that kind of level, it's like it makes me feel excited again, as if I was going to play my first MMO. And get addicted to it. But it was a lot of it's coming to it and going, wow, it's like finally somebody's pushing the technology into an area where we can go finally and have all this, because every game's always done it and had to sacrifice something else to have that one thing happen, and now we get to have it all at once. And within reason, there is going to be limits to a certain extent, but there's a lot more at the table for Steven right now.
And just when they were saying, and this is not even the final, like, it's not even its final form, and I'm like, what else could you do? Like, I was literally like, okay, I understand polish, right? You can do polish, but what, like, literally what else could you add?
Well, his terminology is like how many passes has gone through the team. So the guy builds it, makes it happen, shows the team goes, okay, we need to refine that, and then the second iteration comes through and works on it for a period of time. So he's looking realistically. He's been, just from what he's spoken of, he says he likes to look at things a few times. So there might be 5 to 7 or 8 passes on something before it gets finalized. And
but I'm just saying,
and he includes us as a community. He goes, okay, we've looked at this 4 or 5 times or 6 times. What do you guys think of this? And we want your feedback now. So then it might get passed a couple more times on that before they go, okay, we put these tweaks in, and then they show us, okay, that's good, perfect.
I mean, the only thing that I could say is the skybox, because I remember Steven talking about the skybox a couple of streams ago. But I would love to see like star constellations. I want to see like comets, and I want to see. I would love to see even magical things, like things that we like haven't even thought about. You know what I mean? Like I would
Did you
love
notice
that.
in the live stream what was up in the air at one point? There's a little clip, like this. You only see it for about a second. That's in the sky as he's about to go. You see what was going across the sky at that moment.
I guess I didn't notice the sky
There
part.
was a dragon flying in the air.
Oh, I did notice that. That I did notice.
Yeah.
And oh my god, I lost my shit because
Yeah.
because I come from WoW. They killed dragons off in Cataclysm, which was the stupidest freaking mistake, at least in my opinion. And you want to play a game, especially a fantasy game, to see dragons, like dragons. That's why I love Final Fantasy 14, because there's dragons in that world. And I missed dragons. And I just, when I saw the dragon, so first of all, I don't know if you've seen Game of Thrones, but I'm pretty sure you have.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Dude, the Riverlands reminds me of that one area in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And when I saw the dragon, I was like, is Danny on that dragon or what? Like, it was so reminiscent to that one zone. And it was that one zone where they had that battle at. I think it was River Run. Isn't that the area that they were at? Wasn't it called River Run?
I think so, yes.
In Game of Thrones?
I can't recall for 100%, but yeah.
Me neither, but it was something to that effect. And it just, when it started raining and it was like muddy and stuff, it literally reminded of the zone in freaking Game of Thrones. It was just so
and it brings
wicked.
it to life in a whole new level.
Right.
So one of the things I was thinking when I saw that scene is like, first of all, I was looking at the landscape going, wow, in the distance you see an object.
Right.
Mountain way over there.
Yeah.
In the game, you're going to be able to run to that mountain and go up that mountain.
I know. Oh.
Or hill, or whatever the thing is in the distance, but it's so far away, because most games when you see in the distance, I'm going to use Age of Conan for one,
right.
You can stand at one end of the zone, see the end of the zone, and that's all there is.
Right.
Everything else doesn't really exist. It's just a painting in the background. But you can see the end of the zone. You can almost, if you look carefully, you see the line that drew where you shall not pass as a character sort of thing. Right. And in this game, you see the distance. It just keeps going. So, and it's a long ways. You get up on those mountaintops. And so I was looking at, there's a distance. I want to run down onto the field, and I wonder if that dragon flying overhead starts to circle and then comes back down to the ground because you're in its territory now, or maybe you're getting too close to its nest.
It's just,
that's what I was like, I can't wait for that to happen.
And the way not only the seasons dynamically changed, but the way the creatures did too was such a beautiful touch, and it probably, you didn't need to do that, right? Like, it wasn't like you need to do that, but because they did do that, I'm there looking at it like, it's pretty badass. I don't know. Like, I love it. I love the grizzly bear, like literally getting the snow on him and he has like brush it off. And then like, but not only that, like there were like the cat literally was changing colors as the season changed. And even the stag did the same thing. I don't know. It was such a great, like you said, a detail. It's
details. Yeah. And from what I understand, the Kieran or the stag-like mounts,
right,
creatures, those as they change, when the winter comes in, their coats go white and they go crystally and all that sort of stuff. So maybe their power sets change a little bit, because it is going to be environmental causes and effects on the stuff. From your character to animals to everything around you. That mountain, like it is also saying, like the mountain pass, you travel all summer long and all spring long, but in the wintertime, maybe it's closed.
Well, and that's the thing too. Remember whenever he had to change the because it was winter and there was that glacier ice that was blocking the doorway to go into where the sandal was, but then when it went to spring, you saw it literally melt. Yes. I was like, what the heck is going on? Like,
that's cool. I like that stuff.
I love that, the fact that there's going to be ways maybe to get to certain places because of obstructions naturally happening, and then when other seasons happen, those obstructions are gone. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just wild. Like, I don't know, man. I literally saw the live stream, and mind you, I was working till 5 o'clock. I saw the live stream. I saw that they they uploaded the video to YouTube like pretty quickly right after the live stream. I watched the 3-minute cinematic again, and then I watched the freaking 30-minute presentation again, and I'm probably gonna watch it again. Like I don't know, like because there was so
I
much.
watched it on Twitch myself, and then I went
Right.
to YouTube to watch the 4K version.
And there's such a
really
difference.
brings it up.
There is
And,
such a difference.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of more clarity in 4K.
Right.
So being able to play the game in that, and I was just describing it to somebody before a couple hours ago. I said, like all those games that we played over the years, where you see these amazing cinematics. World of Warcraft was even like that too. The cinematics for the was like, oh wow, there's the elf racing through, and she transforms through the jungle, and oh, that's amazing. And then you get into the game, and it's not quite like that at all.
Right. Very different. But
very different.
But
but this game, we're going to be able the cinematics. You're going to be playing the cinematics because the clarity
Right.
and the whole graphic content of UE5 just brings that alive. Yeah, so it'll be like the high end graphic cinematics in a lot of ways.
For sure. And again, like the cinematic, the 3-minute cinematic is not a cinematic. It's rendered in-game footage. It's still in game. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I showed my fiance the 3-minute cinematic, and she was just like, wow, that's really pretty. I was like, and that's in game? And I was like, yes, this is in game. This isn't like, because the way the cinematic starts, it shows you the very lush, like vine, the structure and just the really beautiful green, like hilly valley or whatever, and her eyes just like, oh, you know what I mean? It was just like, and then as soon as it went into rapidness of like showing immediate, like the winter to spring to summer to fall, like she was just like, can other MMOs do that? And I was like, no, babe, there's no
not
other
at that level.
Not at this level. No other MMO can do this right now. And she was just like, wow.
There's some MMOs that look really good, but not at that quite at that level.
No, not at that level at all. So I'm curious. So now that we nerded out about this, this is sort of my beef with seasons, and maybe some people disagree. Maybe you might disagree with me, because Steven talked about spells being empowered in certain seasons, right? Like if you're in winter or you're in a snowy area, your frostbolt may do more damage because it's winter, or you're in a frost zone,
or your fire damage doesn't do quite as well.
Right. Now,
maybe it does in the winter, but not when it's raining.
Possibly. Now, what do you, two-part question, what do you think about that, and do you think it's good?
I think it throws a bit of a realistic, as well as realistic as you can get with fantasy, factor. So if I'm a mage that's all can flame on and throw fireballs all over the place, well, if it's raining, my fireballs won't be as effective. They won't burn as bright. But if I'm in a storm, my lightning powers might. So it could be raining and lightning, and thunder, and my lightning powers might be able to be more effective.
Just become Thor, dude. You'll be fine.
Yeah, there you go. You got control with it all. But I think that's going to put a new dynamic into it. So there's a lot of considerations people in there will be facing for the first time in an MMO, and don't realize that, I jacked up on a certain trait and a certain power set. I guess I have to diversify after they go out there after a while and realize it's a big factor. But I don't see 5 or 10% being that much of a difference, to be honest. Because in the scheme of things, if you can hit for 1,000 points and you lose 10%, well, you're just hitting for 900 temporarily.
Right. Again, on the surface, I don't like it. I don't mind it affecting vines or nodes. When I say nodes, I mean like herby nodes, mining nodes, or anything like that when it comes to profession gathering, because I know seasons are going to affect that, and even certain fishing spots, or like, fish transforming or even migrating to certain parts or whatever they choose to do. I don't know how to feel about player character power being affected by zones, because I've even seen some people say that certain zones might be inhabitable. Like, so you'll get like a ticking damage to your player character, and I'm like, here's my thing.
Well, if you get frostbite, you didn't bring the furry clothing, so you're gonna want that parka.
So here's my thing. Ashes is not a survival game. Every time I hear this, I think of survival MMOs, like, or not even survival MMOs, but just a survival game like Valheim, or even V
7
Rising.
Days to Die or
Right.
Rising, any
Just
of those games.
right, because those have sort of conditions like that, and it makes sense in a survival game. This is not a survival game. This is an MMO. And again, like, I am all up for trying it. I just think that it's not
Yeah,
going to
I see
be
where you're coming from on that. I would have to say that, well, I know for that in some cases, well, you used to see some sort of damage if you got into a cold zone too cold, and you have
right,
to upgrade gear that's geared towards it, because you would get that ticking damage.
right,
But I think it was more of an afterthought because it wasn't really doable for the MMOs
right,
historically. To do it well, if you can't do it well, why bother? Sort of
right,
thing, and skip over it, sort of thing. But I think with it being brought into the genre now, it opens up with the field. So now that stuff will matter. It's not so much as going to be a heavy survival thing. It's going to be part of the MMO
right,
experience. So he's introducing a new factor that's fresh
right.
in better ways.
And mind you, just to preface, I'm not saying, and
Yeah.
what the things that I just said right now is all conjecture. It's not stated by Intrepid or by Steven. Like, these were just
No.
thoughts that I saw on the forums and people talking about, like, and when I mentioned, like, player damage because it's too hot or you're in a place too cold, like, that's not stated by Steven or anything like that. But I'm just saying that
Could
if it's
play a factor though.
it could, like, they could add something like that, or maybe that's not even on their radar. I don't know. Again, Alpha
Yeah,
2,
they
like,
might go. Well, he did kind of hint that there would be player damage in certain zones.
right, no,
If
he did.
have the
He
right
did mention
equipment
that.
and stuff. So,
Right,
maybe lighter clothing or cloth armor for the hot zones, and maybe wool armor or wool
right.
underwear, basically for the cold zones, that
But
sort of thing.
I
But
guess the reason why
even have,
I'm sorry, just
I'm just trying to. It's a new factor, so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out ultimately. But I think it's why not throw it in? Makes it better realism.
well, it just comes down to, like, bag space, right? Because he always talks about space being limited and
Yes.
having, I don't know, like, 2 sets of clothings. If there's going to be 15 items you have to swap back and forth, and you have to have 15 things in your bag because you're going to be migrating or going to different parts, like, I don't know if players are going to like that, especially if bag space already is going to be super limited, especially if you want to go and, farm or quest or, just do several things, and you have to have a whole other gear set because you're traveling, like, I don't know. And the other thing that I think about too is, like, in World of Warcraft back in Classic, if you were doing like Molten Core and you were a fire mage, you were pretty much useless. I'm not saying that's going to be the same case for Ashes of Creation, but all I hope is that they don't invalidate certain spells completely because of a season. You know what I'm saying? Because if it's
Make it so you can switch up your powers though too.
no, correct, and I've always
So
been
you
an
can
advocate of
switch
that.
different power sets, and
Right,
make that free and open.
right,
Don't make it so you just went down this route. Make it so you can change it.
right,
And have some sort of system in place so you can't flip back and forth constantly. But
right,
if you know you're going to go into this zone, be able to do it, and then have a cooldown before you can switch back or something like that.
right,
Or make it so it is quick and easy. Uh, Bag space, that's always a bone of contention when it comes to games. There's
for
ones that
sure,
are restricted, there's ones that don't. The ones that don't are more likable.
for sure.
Weight, he wants to try and put weight into it. So yeah, I
Wait,
can
does
see
he?
that. But well, if you're gonna have you can only carry so much weight wise. If that is he gonna follow through on that, or does he change his mind? We don't know yet.
God, Steven, no, don't do that.
But like more
Don't
weight,
do that.
the slower you run, and that's fine. But when it comes to
Mm-mm.
wardrobes and armor sets, if you're going to have multiple of them, have a separate bag that's standalone, a wardrobe set that
Right.
you can preset, and you can say, okay, when I hit this button, I want to wear this armor. I change into it. You can't do it in battle, of course, but
Right.
I want to wear this set of armor before I go into battle,
Right.
and it's a preset. Why not have it? You know, a lot of games do that, and a lot of that stuff now is making
Right.
it so it's easy to switch the armor in and out. We have presets that you can flip back and forth on. We could do, like, ESO is a good example, the one mod that you could do. As long as the armor's in the one and you're carrying it, you can flip it back in and out. But make it so it's its own separate bag, because resource gathering needs to have its own stuff going on. And there's
Right.
Lord of the Rings used to drive me insane, and they increased the bag space over time as stuff started happening in bank space, of course. But it took them so long to do it. It's like, just make it so we have the bag space,
Right.
you know, and just make it so it happens, because there's nothing more frustrating than trying to constantly clean your bags out, because you know you're going to use it, but
Right.
but you have to keep it with you, and pretty soon 1 or 2 items gets added on. Expansion happens when now you're carrying more and more, and your bag space that you can actually, that's transient, is getting smaller and smaller.
I mean, they could always make it even a whole separate UI. Like you can literally have so you have your actual bag, right? And in World of Warcraft, they have a bank where you can put more bag slots in there to add more stuff. So you have like an actual bank deposit, separate bag slots where you can open it up, and then you have one backpack that's like 16 slots, and then you can expand it by adding. You can add 4 more bags to it. Now, I don't know how they're going to choose to do that for Ashes. Personally, they can just have one huge backpack and say this is sort of the space. However, then what you can do is be like, yes, you are going to be limited, right? There's no really expanding the backpack, but if you have a profession, there's a separate UI for gathering, so you can, and then it's going to be very limited at the beginning, but as you level your profession, the bag space grows and grows. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I would not mind that. And even if they had another separate UI for armor, like you were saying, like if so that way if you do want to have, you know,
I think they should go the route or something along that lines. Absolutely, make it so it's convenient. Don't make it
exactly
a pain in the ass.
exactly
Because I quit
correct
a game when it's like, oh, this is just BS. I'm tired of playing this game.
My whole fear with Ashes is there's a lot of hardcore components to Ashes, and I think again I'm excited for a lot of the hardcore components personally. I've never tried them before, but I'm very excited to, as a World of Warcraft player, just, hey, I'm gonna dive right in. I'm just gonna take it all as it comes. But I do think, and that I've always been a huge advocate of this, is that we need to meet in the middle between hardcore and casual. Having unlimited freedom is completely casual in nature, right? When nothing is restricted, you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want. That is a very casual way to do MMO gaming. Now,
I think if they lower, I think the leveling, so casuals always kind of complain, well, I want to be there without doing the effort. That's not
True.
the kind of casual we want to play the game, nor do
Right.
I ever want to have that person in the group.
Right.
But when a casual comes in and plays the game, as long as they can attain the same stuff as a hardcore player,
right,
over time, eventually, they
right,
can still achieve it. They just have to do it. You still have to earn it.
Right. Or you may never. Like, I mean, you may not be good enough.
Never.
And I think it's
that too.
It's being, I guess my whole thing is, right, is that everybody wants the best gear, but they don't want to make the effort to get the best gear. And so
then you don't get it.
Then you don't get it. Exactly my point. Like, and I think being casual,
then you can craft it. There's an option to craft, so boost your crafting.
And
Spend
again,
your time gathering and crafting.
I really do think
it could be within a few stats, and it should be comparable, or not quite equal, but it could be within equal or comparable to what you can earn in raids and stuff like that. So.
Right. And here's my thing too. I honestly think casuals, if you're in a right-minded guild that isn't gonna fuck you over or anything like that, I think you can be a super casual person and get very good at it. Right. Because if you, let's say all you want to do is go and be a lumberjack, go chop down trees, and that's all really you're gonna do because that's what you have time for, you know. You play like 3 hours, you know, let's say a day, compared to everyone else that's playing like 8 or 10 hours a day because everyone's just like playing all the time. But you belong to a guild and you give them all your mats and you say, hey man, I chopped for 3 hours. I just chopped trees down. Here you go. And then everybody knows that, hey dude, you've been supplying us for months with a shit ton of freaking wood. Like, what gear do you want, man? I'll make you whatever the hell you want. And again, that could happen.
That's one thing that I used to be in a guild called Columnistra. And shout out to anybody from Columnistra who watches the video. You guys are awesome in Neverwinter. You're one of the guilds I look for, and I found in the game because I've had predecessor guilds that I've joined, and they're amazing. But one of the things they did was that they had a guild bank, and people donated armor to it.
Right.
And as a guild member, once you've proven that after a period of time, you become a full-on member, you can request that stuff out of there. So if you put in resources, they had no problem giving you that stuff.
Right.
And so, that's a chest piece I can really use, and stuff like that. And it could be some really awesome armor that somebody crafted, and it was comparable to the raid stuff to a certain extent, or it helped them get into the raids at least. And so it was well organized, and it went a long ways for a lot of that for the casual players. And there's a lot of people that's all they wanted to do is they just go out and gather resources, and didn't have time for raids. Every so often they might jump in a raid once a month or once every couple of months, stuff like that. But they're more interested in the crafting side. They either made their own gear or helped the guild advance somehow.
Right. And so, and again, I think Ashes is very primed that where you may not play the game a lot and you may not be good, but because you are literally helping a group of people in their endeavors, they're probably going to throw you a couple of bones, man. And they're going to give you some high end or really, really good gear because, hey, you've been supplying us from the beginning. And anytime we need that resource that you do, it's always available. You always make it available. And again, like, I think if you belong to the right guild, you can be treated very well. And again, I love that.
And or knowing the right people too. Or meeting the right people. That's one of the things, because one of the things after City Heroes was one of the major guilds that I'd gotten into is Cross Suns. But they had a limit of only having 300. I think it was 300 people per guild. By the time Cross Suns had expanded, we had a 1, 2, and 3 guild.
Right.
Cross Suns 1, 2, and 3, because so many people wanted to join up on it, and the player base was amazing. They were so much fun, and they were so helpful, and they were just good people in general. It didn't matter which one you talked to in the guild; everybody got along.
Right.
Everybody kind of liked each other, and so helpful. So one of the things I always modeled myself with was trying to find a guild that was like that. And I went into World of Warcraft. We had a guild that started off that way in a lot of ways. Lots of good ideas. We used to buy mounts when people hit 40, when you could ride a mount and stuff like that, and set up for the guild and things. So Extermicide had really gone to a great depths to lay out a plan. What fell apart, or what helps it fall apart, is the toxicity within people in the guild. So that was one of the first games that really went toxic. And infighting and greed, and like, well, how come he always gets it? Well, because he's been on the run 20 times and he hasn't spent his dragon points yet. So somebody just joined the guild. Welcome, I don't get the piece of armor. Sort of thing. Like, you read the stuff on the forums. We tell you explicitly how our guild runs. But and then after that, when I went into Lord of the Ring, I got hooked up with a fantastic group of people. I hope these people come into this game, because they were amazing. The raid leader was amazing. He thoroughly explained stuff. He had cool ideas in learning raids, and very effective. Like laid back, casual. It didn't even seem like it was a hardcore thing, but man, we were going at those guys hard. We were training ourselves to do the fights. One of his favorite incentives to do, or to learn a fight in a new boss in a raid, especially when a brand new raid, was bring your normal gear. We'll start with blue gear, and we'll only we'll try and collect the gear too, the purple stuff, the epic stuff. But we are going to beat this boss using blue gear only. So now you have to learn the fight. Now you have to learn the movements. Now you have to look out and move out of the red spots.
Right.
And we were successful. We would die like a million times, like doing this fight at 40 times in a row
Right.
for weeks. But then all of a sudden one day it just clicked. Everybody played their role. Everybody had to
Right.
play their character, just do the right power sets. And we all got into the nice little groove, and
Hmm.
it was a lot of fun. That's how we would learn the fights. But
Right.
the whole time we had this calm voice in the background explaining what everybody is anybody not know what their role is, and he'd take them just a moment to explain very quickly and to the point how you should be doing your powers or where you need to stand and watch out for that. And that whole group of people, they would craft anything for you. If you gave them mats, if you didn't have all the mats, somebody else had the mats, they would throw it in. And it was just an amazing guild to run with. And then there's
Right.
the other guilds. I left that MMO at one point, and the guild, I went separate ways due to age and stuff of the game. But then I found the same exact type of people in Neverwinter online,
Right.
and wow, it's just amazing. So I think we have a good chance to find that same core in Ashes as well, and you're going to
For
see a
sure.
lot of guilds like that, because one of the things Steven says that you get to have a small guild.
Right.
Minimum players 30, and you're going to be just as effective if the guild was 300. So you're going to be able to go down a different trait and have
We'll
stronger
see.
powers and see what happens.
We'll
We'll
see.
see how he does it. They kind of did stuff like that in Neverwinter online,
Right.
and certain power sets and stuff, and it works. And
Right.
you really do get a good guild boost. But the important part of the game, when I saw in Alpha 1, is that you are contributing no matter what you do in the game, either
Right.
to yourself, to the guild, or gathering resources for the node.
Right.
So your guild might not be in charge, but you're still helping the guild or the node develop. So
Right.
that's all like it's so intertwined and interconnected. It's going to be amazing
Right.
to see. So the casual players, you're still doing something. You're still contributing. So,
Right. I mean, my whole thing is that I don't think guild size should be limited. I think it should be limited, but at a very high cap. I think 2,500 is a good cap for Ashes of Creation,
yeah.
in my opinion.
I would have to caution on that size of a number, and I see why. I'm starting to understand it better now, because Steven is going to start off with 10,000 on a server at any given time. So
Okay.
that's going to be the max line. And they're trying to increase this, of course. I think his ultimate goal is he might be up to 20,000 now. I can't remember the exact number he is aiming for. 10,000
Right.
works very smoothly, but I think it's going to be probably when the game launches, it'll be closer to 20,000 or 30,000, hopefully,
Right.
players on a server at one time. One of the biggest downfalls for New World, there's only 2,000 people allowed on the server at one time. How can you call that a multiplayer?
For sure. Yeah.
Because back in the day in World of Warcraft, it was a lot higher than that. So we
For
had
sure.
when that game went live, the first server we were on, if I remember correctly, it was something like there was only 8,000 Alliance people, but there was something like 12,000 and something
Right.
Horde. So the Alliance was always outnumbered.
Right.
So that was 20,000 people on the server.
Right.
Back in those days, they didn't have the multi-phasing and multi-instancing of the same instance, so they weren't
Right.
dividing groups of people. And I always thought that was a poor choice for developers to help lower-end people
True.
who have lower-end computers, players with lower-end gear and equipment, to help them so their gameplay would smooth out. I thought that was just a cheap way of doing it. And because like when we went into Age of Conan, you could only have 199 people standing in the instance watching your guild housing raise. It's because it was multi-layer, and it was like that throughout the whole game. So you didn't really feel that you're limited. We walked into that game with 1,000 players from Old Timers Guild.
Right.
So only 199 got to watch the guild housing fortress be raised, and that was it. The rest of us were out of luck.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Even World of Warcraft back then had 1,000
Mhm.
as a max limit. I just think 300, I think it's 350
Yeah.
that is the limit for ashes. I think that's just way too small. Because again, you're good. Discord communities have been happening since 2016 or 2017,
Yeah.
whenever,
The
you know,
mega guilds are going to be broken up.
right. And
Anybody who has over 500 is going to have to figure out a smaller guild, so they have multiple guilds. So
right,
that's going to make self-alliancing a possibility.
right,
Yeah, so it's going to be a big juggle. So if you come in with over 1,000 players, well, you could have 3 guilds, separate guilds that are all co-allianced together.
right.
And well,
But the reason why I think that's kind of terrible is because people want to be under a single banner. And I think alliances are great with completely different entities, right? Like if there's Guild A, right? It's like Guild A1 and Guild A2 because they're all still the same guild. But if it's Guild A that's alliance with Guild B, that's a whole other group of people, that's totally fine. But
that's more dynamics.
right, because again, the only reason why I say this is because of the leveling process for guilds. There's going to be a guild leveling system. And because if you break it up into 3 guilds, right? Like let's say guild 1 and 2 is full, but guild 3 isn't, and they're not going to grow as quickly, but you know what I mean? So what people do we put in the 3rd guild, right? And people that are in the 3rd guild are going to feel less than because you know they don't have as many perks as guild A and B do. You know what I mean?
Well, there'll be a class system for sure. There'll be like the elite players will be guild 1, the
right,
other ones that are in the group, so you can make the elite players only have 30, so they become the strongest power sets. Then you can have it so the next guild 2 only holds 100, then guild 3 holds the full 300, but that's where you recruit to keep guild 2 and 1 full all the time and active.
right. I guess all I'm trying to say is that I think there's going to be very few guilds that are going to be over 1,000 players. So I think again, like maybe 25 players was kind of overestimated in my own head, but let's just start at 1,000.
No, there's guilds that big. If all the old timers showed up and decided to play Ashes of Creation, that's over 5,000.
Oh, for sure. That's what I'm saying. Like, especially if Ashes of Creation still stays on this freaking trajectory of showing amazing ass technology, there's going to be a shit ton of people playing this game. So all I'm saying is like, look, I understand the niche in small guilds, right? I get it. But again, I think the big guilds, even if you did have, let's say 2,500 players and there is a max of 1,000, you're gonna have to create 3 guilds.
Yep.
Having to do that and having to order all of that is going to be a lot for that guild and the guild leadership to handle and handle it well.
There's people out there that can do that, though. I've seen them pulled off
for sure.
in a lot of other games.
One
of the things, so let's say it's 300 and you stick with the 2,500.
Right.
Well, that could be up to 8 guilds.
Right.
That could be 8 guilds. So what do you think is, so the master guild is protected. You have to go through the other 8 just to get them.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's a lot. So
they'll take over the server, and literally they take over the server and all nodes in a certain chunk of land.
Well, they may not. I mean, because again, I think people have this misconception that just because they're a big guild means that they're going to take over the server. I think especially for how big we see Ashes to be.
Well planned, they could.
Well, right.
They could dominate a land maze. We can't invade them. There's never an invasion because
it'll be impossible.
They all show up.
Right. But again, I understand your point. Like they can take over a certain part, and that's totally fine. I think that's going to happen regardless. But I just feel like limiting guild size, it's just not a good way to feel included, because people love, raising their guild banner and being proud that, hey, we have 795 people in our guild, and we like it that size, and we're all included in one guild. Like there's no need to make a second guild. We're all under the same banner. We're all contributing together, and that feels really good. I just think, especially in other games where, let's say you have a guild size that's a max of 100, and you can increase it up to 300, but you got to level it first. I think that's stupid. I don't like that either. I think just make it to where you can automatically get 300 and either increase the experience because there's 300 people contributing instead of 100, and just limit the perks that go with it, right? I just don't think.
Well, that's kind of what he's doing in a sense, is limiting the perks. So you have to go down the different paths and choose what you want for your guild and which power sets are going
Right,
to be bolstered and all that.
right,
In order to get the bigger size, you have to go down that path, and that's going to take away points. So you're not going to be as strong character-wise, but
right.
you'll have more people in the guild. So
I guess for me, I would just advocate to take all of the player power out personally. I think just don't even have points associated with increasing your guild size. Just take that whole tree or those talent selections away, and just have it to where if you have a size 50 guild, then these are the perks associated with you. As soon as you go to 51, then some become red because now you're over 50. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the way I would do it personally. Is I would basically say, if whatever your size of the guild, then it's going to be predicated by how many members are in there, and if it stays within that range, then these are the perks you have associated with it. As soon as you add more to that thing, and let's say you have a certain talent point into a sort of player power buff for your guild, well, but that buff's only active at 200 players. So once you go to 201, that buff becomes red. Now you have, let's say, a point to reallocate to somewhere else because you went over 200 players. So that perk is no longer available to you anymore. That's the way I would rather have it be. Again,
that's an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah,
because again, I just feel like, and again, they haven't even released this. We don't even know what that is even going to look like. I could be totally wrong. They could have a whole different way to do it. But all I'm saying is that I just don't feel, especially playing Lost Ark, because they really narrowed you into how many people you can do. I think it was only 50 that you could literally invite into a single guild, and it increased by 2 every level. So it was really stupid, and it took a while for you to actually level as a guild. That's what I was saying earlier about how long it takes. Because if it takes a long time, I mean, it's not going to be worth it to keep creating these other guilds, because you got to level these damn things. And if it takes a lot of people to contribute to make it a level, and you don't have that many people in that alternate guild, it's not worth it. It's just like you basically have to say, sorry, we're full, go somewhere else. That doesn't feel good either.
The long game would be worth it, but the short term would be painful.
Right. And that's all I'm trying to say, is that I think there are ways to do it, because again, I think literally less than 3% are probably going to have guilds over 1,000 players. And I think the overwhelming 97% are going to have guilds under 1,000 players. So I think starting probably at 1,000 as a guild cap would actually be really, really good. Because if you want to have that other hassle to make a whole other guild because you're going to facilitate more than 1,000 players, then that's on you, bro. But I just think even 100,
well,
200...
Steven, if you're going to do 1,000, your servers are going to have to be capable of like 50,000 and up live any given time on the server. And I think I would love to see this game go that route. If you can have 50,000 people online at any given time, that's great. Because one of the things I learned over MMOs over the period of time is that no matter what percentage is, so let's say you have 100,000 people that are on one, have accounts on one server, the most you're ever going to see is somewhere between 10 and 15% given on at any given time.
Right.
It seems to be the norm. It seems to be around there. Sometimes it goes as high as 20% and stuff like that. Well, when the game's fresh, it's even higher. It sits around 30 to 40%. And as time goes on, you'll see, 10, anywhere between 10 and 15% on the time. And I've seen this reflected in guilds that are active over a period of time, and I've seen this. So if he's going to have 50,000 per server, but if you're only going to have 10 to 20,000 on at any given time, that's more than some other games.
Right.
But you're restricting on how many people can actually be on and interactive. And if that's the case, if your cap's 1,000, then you're going to run into problems if there's only so many big guilds on the server and they take it all up.
Right. I mean, and again, like it's all testing that we need to do for it. But just to kind of, as we're wrapping this up, what do you think was the biggest takeaway from what we saw for the May live stream?
Kept mentioning Alpha 2 a lot.
Dude, I know.
It's coming.
It's not. It really isn't. I know they keep mentioning Alpha 2, but my whole thing is the reason why is because that's what they're working on, right? Like they're literally working to create Alpha 2 and everything like that. But and I hope I'm wrong. Like I said, Creed, I was hoping for the summer.
Yeah.
I was hoping for summer release for Alpha 2. I was so dead set on it.
The biggest takeaway, well, other than that, is that every time he says it, he's getting more excited. Like, I can't tell you yet. On Alpha 2,
I know.
we're working to development. He goes, so we're getting so closer. We're getting closer and closer. And it's like, well, closer for him's probably, it's like a kid in a candy shop. You're at the front door and you're not inside yet, but you're really close.
Right.
You're not out, you're not at home several miles away. You're at the store, but you just can't go in yet.
Right.
Sort of thing. The other thing I would take away from the thing would be, I'd have to say, is that one of the things he alluded to is that all that stuff that they showed today about the seasons and the changing and that whole film, they stated that was filmed 2 months ago, and they already shown the staff 2 months ago.
Oh, right. Yeah, they did say that.
So that means that they've been working on stuff. So they're basically, what they show us, they're 2 months ahead, 2 to 3 months ahead in any of the stuff they're showing us.
Right.
That's a good sign, because if that's what they're showing us that's 2 months old, where are they today?
Right.
They're ahead,
totally right.
They're ahead of the game, and we've been you and I have been on and burning discussions. It has been stating that they're much more ahead than we
think they are.
They're showing us,
right,
and which is good. So that looks promising, and that helps the game development and the timelines shrink up a lot. So that's exciting.
I think once we see
stuff.
combat, that'll be a huge indication as to the future projection of Alpha 2, because if they show combat, right, and they're really excited, and then chat is like, oh, this is not good, then
they'll go back and rethink, and that's what they did originally in the Alpha 1.
Right.
I watched a UE5 combat capability stuff. So this guy was programming this person to be a fighter and whatnot. So they had the stuff that they're showing the different moves. So they're showing the same move, but it had different trajectories and it had different styles depending on what they were standing on.
Right.
So they would be off balance a little more on something that was like platforms as compared to solid ground or gritty rocks on ground.
Right.
So that would change their swings. So their arc and their swings, it would change slightly so you could have it. So if that's the case, and Steven can incorporate that stuff, he can break up styles. So it's not always the same move twice. One of the best ways to describe it is swinging, doing a swirling sword swing, and then doing an overhead swipe straight down. Well, that's one of the moves. There's a variation of it where the sword doesn't come straight down. It comes down on the side a little bit, or it's a little off kilter, or the swing was a little more wobbly, and then the sword came down. So there's that type of combat that can be thrown in that makes it a little more real and dicier. And of course, the learning your power sets will always be a learning curve for anybody, and see what happens and what your combinations are. If you're going to be able to do combos and whatnot, and then have more success on the third or fourth hit from combos. But it was quite interesting to see what you can do with the UE5 stuff. And Steven's got he's got this program that's just going to like give him his vision of a game. And I really hope, so far he's shown evidence of it, but I really hope they really think about the mechanics of the game, the boss fights. Have the boss do something. Like, if you want to put stuff in the game that is not seen before in games, how about the boss and the giants come up and grab the tank out of the group, like just storm right up, and nobody's prepared to fight the raid boss yet.
Right.
And this boss goes, I'm coming for you. You don't go with a tank. This guy's not wearing a tough enough armor, and uses it to, as a baseball bat, take out the rest of the raid group, and have the guy that's being used have his armor falling off and stuff like that, the whole flaying around and
no, for sure,
as he's beating his comrades.
For sure.
do stuff like that. Have it so the different stuff happens, so that you can pick up the bosses, and not just have it like a cutscene, but have it so you're able to interact. There's a lot more interaction than the standard stand there, swipe, everybody moves, everybody steps back in, swipe in the air, the half of the rig takes a hit. Those days should be gone.
Right.
UE5 really brings more to the table than just that.
Right. Well, I mean, Kreed, it was always great having this conversation with you, but we basically belong to Burning Discussion. So if you want to follow like me or Kreed or whatever, you also have a Twitter, don't you, Kreed?
No, do not.
Oh, okay. Well, like I said,
mentioned on Twitter occasionally.
No, for sure. But yeah, you can always follow me on Twitter. Like I said, I'll put the description below for X's channel. You can always follow us on there. Burn Discussions every other Monday. So, look on Twitch, look on YouTube. We're always there. But Kreed, always pleasure talking with you, man. I had an awesome time chatting.
I always enjoy talking to you, and yeah, for you out there, all you fans and all you people that want to know more about the game, come and see us in Burning Discussions for sure. Because Burning Discussions is unscripted, and we're just live and sitting down and have a good time talking.
Right. All right, guys. Well, I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm Vlhadus. That's Kreed. Thank you so much. Later.
Stay safe.